little birdie told me that you were feeling a little bit lonely. And I have to tell you, it's quite ironic, but you're not alone. In fact, in the UK, 49.63% of adults report feeling lonely occasionally, sometimes, often, or always, and 3.8 million people say that they experience chronic loneliness. I'm not having it. And one of the most common random questions people ask me in comments and DMs is to cover how you make friends as an adult. And do you know what? In some ways, I get it. I get it why you come to me, because I have moved quite publicly from a very big city 5 years ago, London, 5 years sober. Just because you're clean doesn't mean you don't miss it. To a place that is, granted, back to where I was born, but after like 10 years, and not everybody that I used to know even lives here anymore. Many are connected to communities, like church communities I'm no longer part of. And in general, I just didn't have like a network of people like I did when I lived in London. That like the place that I'd spent 10 years building like an adult network was kind of just gone. Not overnight, because we did have like a pandemic as well, so it did feel a lot more gradual than that, but I get why people would ask me. And also because there are lots of really obnoxiously bad things about me, like things that I am terrible at, like really annoying things about me. But something that I am grateful for is that for whatever freaking reason, call me like an emotional nepo baby, because my parents are also incredibly sociable, I would say I'm an extrovert. Like I am somebody who doesn't get nervous speaking in public. I've spoken in front of hundreds of people and not really been that fazed by it. I have no problem just bounding up to people and being like, hello, I'm Lena, what's your name? For that reason, I get it. But also, I've kind of been hesitant to answer questions about it because I have struggled. Do you know what I mean? Like, I have definitely struggled to make friends as an adult, especially as somebody who is no longer attached to a specific industry that is active around the Midlands where I live, or in a workplace like I had been. Like, a lot of my friends either stemmed from hobbies or specifically related to London, or from like workplaces that I was in, where you could literally just like, you saw people every day. And as now somebody who works full time from home and lives somewhere a lot quieter than London, amongst a slightly different demographic than what you might find in London, I found it challenging at times. And I've been like, I don't know why people are coming to me for this, because I have no idea how to do it. But actually, in the last few years, I feel like I have really hit the ground with it and like actually started cracking some of those eggs. So there are some learnings that I wanted to pass on, or at least like stir your brain with. And I hope that to the extent to which they could be applicable to your lives, they might help. And if not directly something you can copy, at least something that might give you an idea of what to do if you are somebody who is an adult and struggling to make friends. Another aspect of this is, of course, being child-free, which is personally for my life, I think one of the greatest decisions I've ever made. But also it does, like when you are in school or like at university or in a workplace, there are certain physical shared spaces and parameters in which you have a community and you are making friends. And without that, the only other real consistent like mass way that people do that is through having children, meeting people at school gates. You have like fireworks night and harvest and Christmas and all of these places to meet that are free to attend, and events. I know that people, and I have some really good friends of mine who have children who also struggle to make friends as adults, but I'm just saying there is another factor, I think, in there being like less of a framework for it. So with all of that in mind, here are my 3 learnings from the past 5 years of trying to make friends as an adult in a new situation to me. Point number 1, and this is very important: leave your ego at the door, because you are about to advertise your loneliness. Yes. I'm going to need you to be very honest about it in incredibly random situations with people that you had no idea might be able to solve the issue for you. And I think there is no shame in this, in being like, I'm actually struggling to meet people that live near me. I'm struggling to, you don't have to say I don't have any friends, because you can just say I'm struggling to meet people near me, or I'd love to meet more people, or, you know, it'd be really nice to have somebody to go down the pub with at the end of the day, and I haven't met anyone like that yet. You know, stuff like that. I think it's very, like, it's normal to say that if you're like a single person who's looking for a relationship. And I think it should be normal to be like, do you know what? I want a board game buddy. You know, I want a pub buddy. I want, you know, and just talking to people more about it when they ask you how you are. And it doesn't need to be a sob story or like a trauma dump, but just like, anyway, I have some examples of when I've done this and it's really worked out. Situation number one, I was at a wedding in Bristol. Bristol, for those of you who are not familiar with the UK, is absolutely freaking nowhere near where I live. Like, absolutely nowhere near. In fact, kind of a ball ache to get to. Just some feedback for Bristol. Better public transport needs to be sent to Bristol because, Jesus Christ, if you do not live in London, how are you supposed to get into that city? I don't know. Anyway, I was in Bristol at a wedding and I was just sitting randomly next to somebody at the ceremony. So not when you're actually like placed with people, but just like somebody happened to be sitting next to her at the ceremony. And of course, I start chatting to her because we like to chat. And she was living somewhere, again, nowhere near Bristol and nowhere near me, but proceeded to chat. I could have at that point been like, well, she doesn't live near me. She's not somebody I'm looking for to be a friend, blah, blah, blah. But she was really nice. And she asked me where I live. And I told her specifically where I lived and said, I'd love to meet more people around there, you know, like, because I don't really know that many people my age and I'd like to. And she paused for a minute and she checked exactly where I lived. And she was like, oh, actually, one of my childhood friends has just moved there with his wife and they are also kind of new to the area and I think they might want some friends too. Do you want me to introduce you? And I was like, yeah, do you know what? I actually do. And again, feels cringy, but like followed up to be like, after the wedding, to be like, hey, you met me at the wedding. You're going to introduce me to your pal. Like, let me know. And she did. And I think that's the thing of like those random moments where you're just saying it out loud to people. Another one was I was at a conference in London and I was just really vocal at the end about where I was getting the train back to, like when I was meeting people afterwards. And it just so happened that I was talking to somebody and they were like, oh, I also live like kind of near there. And I was like, brilliant. Do you want to go for a coffee when we're back in that place? And she was like, yeah. Seeding it into people's minds so they think about you when they hear about somebody else that might also have your predicament and live near you, I think is really good. Another example is one of my really, really good friends recently went to, I think it was a hen do. Obviously at hen do's you meet other people's mutual friends. And she met somebody who had been placed to work in somewhere like near me and was about to move there. And I was like, brilliant, just let me know when she's moving, give her my number. Like, here you go, please. And I've been for a drink with her as well, just because you think that there aren't any connections, but I think if you're more vocal about it, there might be. Another part of like advertising your vacancies for friends is that I have started getting into the very silly habit of when I want to go to something local and it's not something that like Craig would want to come to me with, I just book 2 tickets, even though it's only me, in the good faith that somebody will want to come. And every now and then that has resulted in me going on my own somewhere, but sometimes that has resulted in me meeting somebody really great. So for example, I was going to a screening of something a few months ago and I text my friend who lives in the area and been like, I know this is not your thing, but do you know of anybody who would want this extra ticket? Because I really want to go and I'd like to go with somebody who is as keen about it as I am. And she was like, actually, I do know somebody and you've actually met them before, but it was a long time ago and you don't know that you both have this connection to this piece of art. And I was like, oh, and we ended up going together and it was really great. And I think there are like situations where it's not, especially if it's like a very low price ticket and you want to support that cause or that thing anyway, like buying an extra one it's much less weird, I think, if you're nervous about seeming weird, to say, oh, I'm going and I have an extra ticket, would you like to join me, than being like, hey, when are you free? Do you want to go to this thing with me? Maybe, don't know. What should we do? Like, sometimes people's decision fatigue can get in the way of them saying yes or getting back to you. And I think if you're really direct about your ask and you're like, I'm already going, this is the specific date, this is a specific ask, this is the amount of time, and it won't be awkward because we're going to something, we've got like an activity to do, we're not sitting opposite each other. I think it's like a less intimidating way for people to say yes. Do you know what I mean? Like, be clearer about your ask. And you also don't need to like be really obvious at the beginning that you just bought an extra ticket for a fictional friend. You can, people will assume, oh, I've got an extra ticket for this. They'll assume that somebody dropped out. And it doesn't matter if they actually didn't drop out and there's nobody ever to take that ticket in the first place. You get my point. My second learning is beggars can't be choosers, but they can be community builders. I think instead of thinking, oh, I need to find like my best friends ever within like a 10-minute walking distance of my house, think about those touch points if in your day, especially if you're somebody who works from home, where you can literally just communicate with another person. They don't need to be your best friend. They can just be somebody that knows your name and knows your face and you can have a little conversation with. And I think that goes a huge way to building connections with people, meeting people through those people. For example, I can feel like I haven't had very much human connection apart from Craig for a couple of days, and I can pop into town and I know pretty much everybody who works in my post office now. All the staff know me. I know the woman at my favorite newsagents, and like several members of her family know me by name now when I come in. These are all like really nice connections to have with people that don't necessarily have to lead to the kind of friendship where you're having like sleepovers or going out for a drink. It's just nice to be known by people. And I think part of that is like to be known spiritually, like to be known deeply. You also do have to be known of. Like you need to not be the silent ghost that moves through your shops and your town centres and your communities without giving people eye contact or asking them how their day is or talking about the weather. Like cultivate the art of talking about the weather. I think it's really important. And I think also like I have joined some groups locally where I am quite easily the youngest for like 20 years maybe sometimes, and that's fine. Sometimes more like 10 years, but you know, like I don't think you should turn up somewhere and realize that nobody's your age and think that there aren't potential friends there, especially if you're child free, because the reality is that if you're free, like probably people who have children aren't free and the people who are free are probably retired, or they are also child free, but more likely retired. And there's nothing wrong with that. Actually, I'm ageist towards I've talked about this in my video about aging, but I feel like I have been ageist towards my future self, thinking that I will become boring. And I probably project that onto other people. And I look at a room full of people who are much, much older than me, and I think, oh, well, these people are going to be boring. And that is not necessarily the case. I haven't found that to always be, sometimes, but not always. There are lots of boring people that are also my age. So I think that, again, like not having this ideal idea of what a connection is and what a friend is, and like especially if you've moved from one town to another, not trying to just find a replica like group of friends or a replica like replacement for a local friend, can lead you to having more connection and interesting conversations with people, and you actually don't know where that will lead. I don't think that we should view friendship in the same way as we view dating. I feel like when you turn up on a date, you really want to connect with somebody, you want to click straight away. And I don't always think that ideal shouldn't carry over into dating. I think about some of my oldest friends in the world. Two of my oldest friends I've probably known since I was about 7 or 8, and I'm still really, really good friends with both of them. And I realized that we do have a really similar sense of humor and we click. But that's because we have built a sense of humor together. Like we have together, but somewhere between us over the years built up like a rhythm and like a certain tone and a certain kind of slapstick that will make us both laugh. And it's not necessarily something we had when we were like children, not automatically maybe. It's something, and I think that if I met some of the people that I've been friends with for a long time, if we met now, would we immediately click? Maybe not, but we have built something over the years together that is common ground, that feels comfortable, that feels like a cozy cardigan, and it's not something that happens straight away. I think this idea of like a spark is silly, and I think that we can slowly build that over time if we're patient with people. And my last point with that is, I think we look at trying to find things in common with people and be like, oh, I've got to, they've got to have these political beliefs or these hobbies or this vibe or like this kind of thing. And like, if they don't have those things, we can't be friends. And I do think that, like, especially if you are not in a really, really big city, or you are not like living somewhere hip and cool, which also happens to be some of the most expensive places in my country, locality is commonality. Like if you live close to somebody and you're both invested in a town or a city or a small village, that is your thing in common, and I think that is enough. Like, I have invited friends that I've met locally to come on walking tours with me, or I've attended with them like tours of like local old buildings, and that's really interesting. And that is part of having something in common, is being interested in the place that you live and caring about it. And my third point is, every time you do meet somebody new and you're obviously honest about the fact that you would like to make more friends, copy their notes. Like, if they're also new or they've even lived here a long time, they will probably have some knowledge about specifically the place that you live and how it works. For example, when I moved to my area, I looked at Instagram and was like, there's not much like local activity going on social media. I guess there's just nothing going on. And it became very clear to me the longer I lived here that people around here don't use Instagram, or not that much, especially not for community building. They're much more likely to be on Facebook, been in some local Facebook groups, which have been a wild, and then also on the app Neighbourhood, which I had never heard of before I moved here. But it's very active around here on the Neighbourhood app. And that's something that I didn't know until I started talking to people about wanting to get to know people. And they were like, well, there's loads of meetups. Haven't you seen them on Neighbourhood? And I was like, what are you talking about? And that will be really different depending on what country and what area of your country you live in, like what mechanisms people use to find out about what is going on. Maybe it's Eventbrite. Maybe they're people who genuinely sign up to local alerts on Eventbrite, or maybe it's like bands in town. But getting to know like the architecture of connection in your town and like asking about that is really good. And also just being like making yourself known to people. So if they have a birthday party or an anniversary party, or they're just having a little get together with friends, they might be like, do you know what? Lena said she was lonely. We'll invite her. It works. I think sometimes you might think, oh, it'd be weird to invite that person to my pub quiz because I don't know them that well. But I think I would feel more likely to invite them if they'd vocally been like, I want to meet more people. Then I'd be like, okay, come to this thing. It doesn't feel as weird for me to invite you now that you have voiced something that you would like. And then again, like, the first person you meet doesn't need to be like your bestie for life. They can just be a connection into a world, or like, you know, the person that you really click with might be a friend of their friend, and you all go to the same exercise class, or, you know, it doesn't need to happen all straight away. And I think that my last point is, if all else fails, join the Green Party in your area, because I've just joined the Green Party in my area. In the UK, the Green Party is having a huge surge, and I am clinging to that hope for like a little life, like mental, spiritual life raft. And I decided to just look up if the Green Party had drinks going on in my area. And they did, just like social drinks that they do every month. And I went, and everyone was lovely. And even if I don't make like the best friends in the world there, which I'm sure that I will, I am just excited to have connections in my town and be doing it for a reason. You know what I mean? Like, even if you go into a social situation and you don't get like the most utopian community hug, like you're not immediately rocketed into Central Perk and surrounded by like the 5 other best friends in your whole life, you will be doing it for a reason. That doesn't mean that it's like a waste of time or something. Like, you're investing in something that is beyond your own personal goals and ego. And I think that that is also part of, like, we won't solve the loneliness epidemic if everybody finds a best friend in their area. Like, the problems run deeper than that, I think, and are much more widespread. And that is kind of bad news and good news, because the good news is there are loads of different ways to solve that. There's not one way to solve the loneliness epidemic, and it's not by having your, you know, basically being in the cast of Friends, even though I hope that for all of us, because it's lovely. But it's also about all the other touch points and ways we make connections with people that are truly meaningful. And it doesn't need to be this like perfect ideal. A book that I read recently that I really liked, and I've mentioned before, is Bad Friend by Michelle Elman. And if you're feeling bad about not having that many friends, or having some horrible friendship breakups, or just feeling like you're not very good at friendship, I highly recommend this book. I think it will make you feel way less alone, and I think it's a really realistic look at how we operate in friendships in the modern age. Thank you so much for watching. This video was made possible by the Gumption Club, and it's why we weren't interrupted by an insane sponsorship of like a friendship app or BetterHelp or something incredibly dystopian like that. So thank you so much to them for making these videos possible, making them free for everybody to watch. If you are interested in joining the Gumption Club, we do actually on our Discord server, as part of my Patreon, have a like meet your locals tab where people can meet people from their local city. And because we have like, I think at least 2,000 people on the group, there is often people who meet locally and actually live really near each other. So that's actually, as an aside, a really nice way to meet people. And I know that there are people that have lived together. There are whole like Gumption houses because they've met on the Gumption Club Facebook or the Gumption Club Discord. So that's really sweet. Yeah, it's just a really nice place to find online, but also occasionally physical community. So that's my little shout out at the end of the video. Thank you so much for watching. And I really hope that wherever you are, you can stick a little ear out. And oh yeah, can you hear that? It's the revolution is coming and it's going to make us all less lonely. Can't wait. Frog Snog out.